So, Jason, what is up with men holding a fish in their photo on a dating app?
Wait, what? Explain.
So, any dating app I'm on, there's always a man with holding a fish,
Holding a fish, like a trophy fish, a real
a
fish, or like
real fish.
a real fish.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
That's what I'm
Why?
asking you as a man. Have you ever posted back when you had yourself on a dating app, which I know you're not at the moment? Did you ever post a picture of yourself holding a fish, or was that something you thought would be a good idea?
Never thought of it, never did it. No, 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 and no way. I don't get that. I'm gonna guess maybe like whoever's doing that, they're kind of like leaning hard into the hunter-gatherer kind of thing. It's like, I don't know, is the hunter-gatherer thing like an attractive thing in
Oh,
the
yeah.
like, is that a
Lumberjack
thing now?
kind of man,
Yeah.
maybe, perhaps.
Yeah. How do you feel about the hunter-gatherer prototype? Is that something you like
I
attractive to you?
mean, yeah, manly man, sure. Show me what you got. Like, yeah, if you're an outdoorsman, sure, but
Well, I mean, I
interesting,
guess if you like that, I mean, the fish photo should be kind of a hot thing to you.
right? Not so much for me, but anyway, welcome. I am Leah.
And I'm Jason.
And welcome to Joint Lodge. We're going to be talking all about dating and the apps and in this modern life, what it means to be dating and using the apps. So we're excited to talk about this discussion and let's dive right in. So I will say I'm a self-professed single person and am currently looking actively and I'm on some of those apps and it makes for some funny discussions with friends. So Jason, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself and your situation?
Yeah, I'm in a monogamous long-term relationship, so I know absolutely nothing about the modern dating world other than anecdotes that I'm hearing from my friends like you. So I am super curious to be the ignorant listener in this conversation. And for anybody else who's an ignorant listener in this conversation out in our audience, kind of be their voice and hopefully channel some of those questions.
Excellent. Well, yeah, let's dive right in. So in my history of dating, which I have been in some long-term relationships, currently single, but it's interesting how I've watched sort of the dating world evolve. I guess originally you'd meet people in college or at the gym or at a bar, and now it seems like everything is going to an app. So dating has followed that trend and now there are dating apps and they've changed over the years. So there used to just be sort of a something you'd take your browser to online, say a match.com or an eHarmony. And now you can just download an app on your cell phone. And it's become very much swipe left, swipe right. Don't dive too deep into people's personalities to find a lot about them. And it feels like it's more of a commodity. We're going to just find as many people as we can for you. So, what are your thoughts on that? I know you're not currently dating or in the dating life world, but as an outsider's perspective, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on what that might feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a curiosity to me for sure. You called out Match.com and eHarmony and like along with OkCupid,
Yeah,
that was kind
remember
of the
that one?
that was the trifecta of apps available the last and only time I was in the online dating market and the app world many moons ago.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to see the evolution. As you probably know and you've seen, we seem to evolve from a point where there was a few apps with longer profiles and big Q&A, and there was sort of reading a one pager and a bio sheet to this world of swiping and more visually oriented short decision making. At least that's my perception of kind of how the world has shifted. Does that sync with your experience in apps right now? And what apps do you use?
Absolutely. And I would agree. I think, yeah, in the olden times of the original applications or, yeah, like Match.com, it was more thoughtful. You'd have to sit down and actually write a whole long profile about yourself, who you are, what you're looking for, what you bring to the table, all that kind of stuff. And I would sit and read what people had written because to me, that was the important part. And now a lot of these online apps or, the cell phone apps, it's very much starting with the picture. So it's all visual oriented and you can swipe left or right as quickly as you can, if that's what you choose to do, without scrolling down to actually read anything that they've written. And to me, there's something lost there. So I'm looking for connection. Yeah, I need to be sort of somewhat attracted physically to the person, but there needs to be some depth behind that. It can't all just be about what a person looks like. They need to back that up with a good sense of humor or curiosity about the world or fun conversations or fun hobbies, good friends, great family, something like that. So I think, unfortunately, just like the rest of the world, so many things have been sort of filtered down into like as quickly as possible. And let's just get to the meat of the subject. Like let's swipe so quickly. And I think there's something lost there.
Do you think there's been a shift in culture where my perception is if you look at the dating world at any point in time, at least in my lifetime, there's always a submarket of people that are looking for casual relationships and hookups. And then there's a submarket of people looking for long-term relationships, polyamorous, monogamous, whatever. So do you think there's been a shift in our culture where the percentages of those two groups has changed and that's why there's more of a visual orientation to apps now? Or do you think there's separate reasons for that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I honestly probably don't know because I'm not looking for the quick hookups, but I do know that there are a lot of apps that are specifically targeting those types of connections. And also living in San Francisco, where I live, there's a lot of people that are open to non-monogamous relationships. They ethically non-monogamous relationships where they may be married to one person but want a girlfriend or a boyfriend or an additional partner. I like that it's ethical. I like that they're being completely above board about it. I think to me that is welcome. It's not something I'm looking for, but I like that there's options out there for all the different people and all the things that they could possibly be looking for. I think there are many different apps based on what you're looking for. There's some that will geolocate and they'll say, "Oh, there's another person that's like 10 minutes away from you or even just in the same bar as you." And then you turn around and you're like, "Oh, are you on that app? Then I am too. And here we are. And okay, let's hook up tonight." It's pretty funny, right? Like even 10 years ago, that didn't exist. So I, I, I think, yeah, the apps are kind of an interesting thing. It's like, are they a blessing? Are they a curse? Are they a necessary evil? For me, the apps allow me to meet a person that I wouldn't have met in my regular life, going to the gym, going to the grocery store, maybe every once in a while going to a bar or a restaurant with friends. It allows me to meet somebody in my same city that I wouldn't necessarily otherwise meet. So to me, I consider an app as sort of a necessary evil. It's a good use of the tool, but I'd like to get off of it as soon as possible and just meet this person in real life and learn about them and spend time with them and not stay on the app for so long. What are some of your other friends who are actively dating giving you feedback or interesting conversations about in the dating app world, Jason?
Yeah, so I don't think this is specific only to dating. So not to pick on dating or the dating world or dating apps or whatever. But what's interesting to me about the anecdotes I hear from friends who are in this world, perhaps including yourself right now, is there seems to be like a pretty sizable gap between intent and behavior. And by that I mean there is a non-zero set of people in that category of looking for long-term relationships. And a lot of my friends maybe are in that group, not all of them. But even though there's that set and there's that intent, I hear about frustrating behaviors like long-term back and forth chats that never result in an in-person meeting. I even heard this anecdote from a friend that said, "Yeah, I'm really psyched about this new relationship," she said. And I'm like, "Cool, like, what's this person all about and where do they live?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know. We haven't met yet. We've been chatting on the app for like 3, 4 months." And then I said, "Oh, that's really interesting." And then, like a month later, I talked to her, like, "How did that thing go?" And she said, "Oh, well, I actually got to the point where I reached out and I said, 'Hey, you want to meet up?' And
Mhm.
she said the person ghosted her and she never heard from them again."
What? That's
So,
crazy.
ostensibly on one side, there was this investment and intent in a long-term chat, at least,
Mhm.
which required, a good level of thinking and time and checking back with each other. And on the other hand, I suppose there was this like fear of vulnerability or misintent or something that goes to the step of meeting in person that was so terrifying that that bridge cannot be crossed. So I just think that gap between intent and behavior is super interesting to me. I hear a lot of friends complaining about, oh, there's just this, this lightness to it. And, we're not meeting up, or there's all this game playing before in person meetups. So, like, what do you make of that? Like, why do you think, if you found that to be the case at all, like, why do you think that is the case?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I have experienced that personally myself, and I think it's people maybe are scared to be vulnerable. It's easy to hide behind the app and type in messages, and maybe you can sound funnier than you are in person, or you think you are, and it is scary to meet somebody brand new for the first time out in the real world and expose kind of like your weirdness or your vulnerabilities and say, "Yep, this is me. This is who I am." And that means like sort of accepting yourself for who you are in order to put yourself out there and meeting somebody new. And I think maybe it is scary. So it's unfortunate, but it does happen. And like I said, I've experienced it from time to time. It's sad because it is easy to quote unquote ghost somebody and just kind of disappear and people deserve the benefit of, reaching out and even just saying like, "Oh, sorry, I met someone else," or "I'm not interested," or "I don't think this is going to work out." You don't have to give long, involved, in-depth reasoning or anything. I mean, especially if you haven't even met in person yet. But I think everybody deserves that. So we should all sort of challenge ourselves to be better at doing that. Like if you'd saw somebody in their real life and you were, say, in line in Starbucks and there was a tussle or something, or you accidentally bumped into them, you'd say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." You wouldn't just ignore it or quote unquote ghost them, right? You'd mention it. You'd say something. So I think everybody deserves that, and people should strive to act that way.
Hmm. What that brings up for me is this concept of disposability. And I think, not to get 5 clicks out from the original topic here, but it actually makes me think about the disposability of media, for example, music again, where
Hmm.
there's so much availability of music or potential dating targets on apps now that it's easy to consider the whole process more disposable, because I think it's the only way we can get the whole entire huge world of media or dating potentials in our brain and feel like we're holistically seeing it and, choosing what we want from it in a way that doesn't leave us with like buyer's remorse. Do you think that's part of it? Because it feels like vulnerability certainly is not a new topic in our universe. Being vulnerable in the dating or relationship world and, opening yourself up to rejection or things not meeting expectations, that's always been a thing. So do you think there's something different about our culture now that makes vulnerability even more scary or challenging for people to adhere themselves to?
Interesting. I really like that, what your take on it. And I think, yeah, people always have been vulnerable, but maybe we didn't call it out as being vulnerable. Maybe they just got a little bit anxious or like, "Oh God, now I'm finally meeting this person in real life for the first time and I'm feeling like butterflies in my stomach or a little sick. Like, oh God, are they going to accept me? Are they going to like me? Are they cute? Do they think I'm cute?" But that is all being vulnerable, putting yourself out there. So now maybe in today's culture, we're more aware of putting names to the emotions and the feelings. And so calling something vulnerable maybe does to some people have sort of a negative connotation and that makes them feel they're weak. And so if you call them out as being vulnerable, they don't want to do that. That might expose some weirdness or something that they want to keep hidden. They want to keep their walls up. I know for me personally, I am a little bit scared to let my walls down. I think everybody is. It's a normal human emotion, right? But some people are better at letting their walls down quicker than others, or pieces of it. You chip away at it. If you start to trust someone, if you feel like they're letting their guard down, then you'll do the same. You want to feel like we're both sort of equal here. You're being vulnerable, then I'll be vulnerable. We'll both kind of like give it a go, right? So that kind of takes us to our first little micro tangent, which is, what is it like to be the first one that's kind of vulnerable? We're all kind of scared to be weird first. Like, wait, basically, if I'm looking for a partner that will accept me for all my weirdness and I'll accept them for all their weirdness, we're all kind of weirdos at heart. I know both Jason and I kind of consider ourselves geeks and we're proud of that. But why do people still try to pretend to be cool? Like, what are they craving? What's causing them to act that way? What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
Yeah, and I'll start with, I'm not immune to this. I would never self-proclaim to be in the business of trying to be cool. But, I think, being cool in this context is sort of being like, one toe in, one toe out, so you can reduce your exposure level to vulnerability, maybe. So, if you're in the long-term dating market in terms of that's what you want from this experience and you're not looking for short-term hookups, then ostensibly, at some point vulnerability is going to enter into it. But I think, mixing vulnerability with staying cool is about perhaps like having one toe in, one toe out. So if your vulnerability isn't matched, you can just take that toe out of the water and say, nope, I was just keeping it cool. That wasn't my intent. And it's just maybe a self-protection mechanism against being hurt or against rejection. I mean, does that resonate for you?
That totally resonates for me. And I would love to hear maybe what some listeners think about that. Are you willing to sort of expose your weirdness or let your walls down, be vulnerable and not just like one tiny little toe at a time, but be all in, go all in and like just accept me for my full on weirdness, right? Are people still playing it cool or are they willing to open up and just like, I am who I am and love me for me? So I'd love to hear what some of our listeners' thoughts are on that.
Absolutely. This strikes me as an interesting area where there's a huge gap between rationality and emotionality, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the rational part says, what's the worst that can happen? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody ghosts me or they don't meet my vulnerability or they reject me in some way. Rationally, that doesn't sound like the end of the world, but emotionally, we're looking to for personal things and personal relationships, and rejection has a personal impact that is natural to be fearful of. So yeah, just that gap between, it seems rational to say go out there and be vulnerable, but also the emotionality of like that's scary and that hurts if it's not met, keeps people at odds. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of on a lighter note, if you could change something about whatever app you're using right now to make it support the experience that you wanted, what would you change?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I think having just that first screen on my cell phone just showing a picture, and honestly, I don't even care if it's a man showing a fish, that would be funny to me. But if it just has a picture, but then some of part of their profile. Maybe it doesn't have to list all of their profile, but because to me, it's not all about what they look like. Sure, I want to feel some sort of physical attraction, but I want to know who they are. I want to see what they wrote. You can see a big perspective of a person just in how they write about themselves. That's part of being vulnerable too. It's kind of scary. Like, oh, geez, I have to sit down and write a biography on myself. What do I write? Do I make it funny? Do I make it serious? Do I put it in bullet points? The guys that list bullet points always crack me up because I'm like, oh, you're kind of an engineer brain like me. You have to like, okay, here's the bullet points. Then there's ones that use all emojis and there's ones that use foreign languages or they'll put in maybe a song lyric or a movie quip, right? So it's very that gives you a lot of insight into a person. So I think maybe that would be one of the main things I would like to see changed is not just having like the full picture, but maybe partial of a picture and then part of their words, what they've written. I think that would be fun for me, a good change.
Seems
Love to
like a
hear
delicate adjustment that might be effective.
Shouldn't be that hard. I'd love to hear what maybe some of our listeners think as well in terms of do you like the current dating apps? Are there any changes you'd like to see on the existing apps? Or maybe if there's a big enough groundswell of like everybody wants some change made, you can talk to the app providers and see if they can change the feature because that would be fun. Although at the end of the day, I think the owners of the dating apps really want you to stay on their apps. They're making money every month for you to be a subscriber. So as much as I don't want to be on the apps and want to meet a person and get off the app, it's to their benefit for me to stay on the app. So maybe they don't want it to work as well as we're thinking they do. That's kind of an interesting thought as well. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's totally accurate and that's a great insight. And so I think, I don't know, again, I'm a third party here, but if I was giving advice to a friend, I would say, keep in mind that you're more a partner. You should be more a partner in the dating app network than a consumer, right? Like the partnership agreement is you pay them, they try to keep you on the app a while, but your part of the partnership is like you want to get off the app and have a relationship experience or multiple relationships experiences that move your life along in that direction. And so like that should be the handshake partnership agreement. And I think like maybe if people conceptualized it that way, the experience would be more aligned to people's intent.
I like that. Great. Well, this is where we come to a point in our podcast called the joint logic moment. So, in this particular episode, since we're talking about dating, finding people, finding quote unquote the one, my kind of take is it's not about finding the one. It's about finding somebody that's willing to do the same kind of like emotional homework. So, they're batting around this idea of emotional intelligence. And I really like that concept. So, instead of just like your IQ, your intellectual, I think there is also an aspect that's different than your intellect because some people can be very book smart or intellectually smart, but not emotionally smart. And it's one thing that's always drawn me to you as a friend, Jason, because you are very emotionally smart. You've put in time. You've done oh, I know you're going to make me cry. You put in the time. You've done the homework. It's not easy. There's stuff you need to work on. Some of us have baggage from our childhood, from our parents. Some people have gone through trauma, right? It's difficult growing up, being an adult, right? So I think putting in that emotional work to make ourselves complete whole human beings before we go out and date, it's very important. And people just bat around like, I'm looking for somebody that's, emotionally intelligent, but what does that mean? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, Jason. What is the emotional homework that you think people need to do in life as well as in dating? Because I know you're not dating, but I think it's equally important to do in life as well.
Yeah, and this is homework that is maybe a lifetime homework assignment, at least for myself or some
Yeah.
people. But I think in answer to your question, I go back to reconciling this potential gap between intent and behavior. If your intent is I want long-term relationships or I want a relationship with meaning that teaches me something about myself and helps me grow, well, your behavior is probably has to match that and probably has to include like more frequent or deeper vulnerability and putting yourself out there. And man, I know that's not an easy thing. It's never been for me. And, I don't envy anybody dealing with that, but that seems like the path towards more emotional intelligence is reconciling your behavior with your intent when it comes to relationship making or relationship building.
I love that. Yeah, the intent. That's a really good take. Thanks for that. I love that. So then I'm going to pivot a little bit here because that was kind of a little heavy and I just want to make it a little bit lighter. And we're coming up to the question we can't answer. And we actually talked on this topic earlier, but it's why are people still trying to play it cool when everybody just really wants connection? If you're on a dating app, you obviously want connection. So I know we talked on it before, but just give me a couple other high level thoughts. Why do you think people still continue to try to play it cool when really we just do want connection in our lives?
Yeah, not to be a broken record with the vulnerability thing, but I think that is kind of the root of this. Like, playing it cool is the opposite of being vulnerable. And
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I guess like probably if I had to put myself in those shoes, you're hoping that the other person makes the vulnerability step. And then, kind of like the ball's in your court to accept and meet that and be vulnerable or, be like, oh, that's not where we're at. I thought we were just kind of chatting and like, I'm not interested or like, I'm going to ghost you now because you're trying to take it deeper. And, like I think that the coolness play, it's like a chess move, right? It's like, yeah, I'm hoping you're the one to be vulnerable if that's what I'm looking for first.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, that's challenging because that sounds great if it works out and you can develop vulnerability with somebody in a safe framework where they have to make the first moves. But if the other person on the other side has that kind of disposition as well, we're never going to get anywhere, right? Like
Right.
that's like a chess game where nobody touches anything on the board and we just stare at the board, right?
Stalemate.
Like, so, there's a fundamental conundrum there, I think, which is like, yeah, sounds great to play it cool and wait for the other person. But if everybody's doing that, then we're not really going to get anywhere, right? So
Yep.
it's almost like maybe the app should have like some kind of coin flip moment where it says like, dear people involved in this chat thread, like looks like you've been engaging for X chats or X days or whatever. Looks like it's the decision point. So like coin flip, like vote now. Do you want to take this to a vulnerability step and meet or agree that you are ready to be vulnerable or not? And then if
Love that.
no, like cancel the relationship and like shut down the chat. I don't know. I feel like when I talk to friends that are struggling with this gap between intent and behavior on the apps, like I feel like there needs to be bigger measures to like kind of like push this along and help people out. Cause I don't know, I just hate to see my friends struggling with this. And it feels like, the reasons these things don't exist on the app, these ideas I'm talking about is to your earlier point, like they want to keep you on the app. But if we're gonna, think of ourselves as partners with the app makers and both sides getting what they want, like maybe we need to treat it as if these mechanisms exist in the app and like put a time limit on these conversations or like, meet each other with like a vulnerability question at some point. Maybe not literally saying like, hey, are you ready to be vulnerable with me? But, something between, you'll hear me use the spectrum analogy a lot because that's the way I conceptualize anything with gray area in our
Mhm.
world. But like,
Yeah.
if, one end of the spectrum here is like, everybody plays it cool all the time, always, forever. And the other end of the spectrum is, we share our life stories and deepest secrets from day one. Maybe like we need to be a little bit more in the middle of those things and then people can get what they want. And again, like easy for me to say as an outsider who's not dealing with this world now. So,
Sure.
I mean, does that resonate with you? And, how do you think you might facilitate that in your experiences in the dating world without like going over your vulnerability threshold?
Absolutely, and I love that. I love the concept of the spectrum between, like, yeah, it's gonna be like, "I'm gonna give you my entire life story from day one," versus, like, "I'm just gonna be really close, not say a word, and zip it up," and yeah, that it is a spectrum. Like, yeah, you chip away at it. You're slowly vulnerable. When they let some of their guard down, then you okay, they've exposed something that's was scary for them, and then I should do the same, and I like that you even thought of maybe making that a feature on the dating app. And I would love to hear what listeners think about that. It's a great concept. And that kind of leads us to here we are at the end of another amazing conversation. We have now had two in the bag here, and this has been so fun talking about this with you. Would love to hear what some of our listeners may think about how the conversation's going. What are your thoughts on what we've said so far? And a little teaser coming up. Our next episode, we're probably going to try to talk about AI and what's going on in that world. So this has been Jason and Leah at Joint Logic, and we've enjoyed having this conversation with you. Till next time. Thanks.
See ya.